Welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Tim.
And I'm Mono Whiteboarder, otherwise known as Peter.
We got like a whole new ep concept. This is something that I've actually been wanting to do for a while. We're going to do like a design crossover. Rather than like a Universes Beyond, which is like, oh, let's take Doctor Who flavor and bring it into Magic. Let's look at the mechanics, see what we can do Magic-wise. And the one I decided to start with is a game I just finished, which is Marvel's Midnight Suns, card-based strategy video game. And the kind of theme of Midnight Suns, it's like a cult character. You might have Blade the Vampire Hunter, Scarlet Witch, you know, Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, those kinds of characters involved. There's spooky magic stuff in there. You typically bring 3 characters, each of which have their own deck of 8 cards. So if you imagine this is like a 3-way sort of jumpstart. All those cards are unique to that character. If you want the cards that Ghost Rider has, you have to bring Ghost Rider. You can't give the Ghost Rider cards to someone else. I guess 3-part jumpstart is kind of its own idea.
Yeah.
Do we think 2-part jumpstart is ideal? Should we have a 3-part jumpstart?
3-part jumpstart. Well, how many cards are in each jumpstart deck?
It's normally 2 packs of 20. 40 doesn't divide that well.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 packs of 10 have like a condensed decks.
4 packs of 12. No, 3 packs of 12. Each pack comes with its own unique card, not included in the pack. I don't know. That's okay. We're not. I don't think we're there.
I think what people have been theorizing about that, like you have like a fixing land that gets added based on the colors of the 2 jump. You know, if you happen to be combining a red, a white, and a blue pack, then you then also add in on top a couple fixing lands specific to those pairings.
I could kind of see maybe it makes more sense in like a digital setting. So like Hearthstone, you have different cards based on what like hero that you pick. Mm-hmm. Arena, you know, maybe you have a Chandra, Gideon's passed away, but Jace, you can pick one of these heroes. You get a selection of cards based on the combination of planeswalkers you pick. And then you build a deck from there. And I guess you could function that in Jumpstart in some way.
Because it is kind of like PvE, it's, you know, player versus like some enemies. You get to be a little crazier in how big your turns are, right? Because there's no second player waiting on you to finish. Your turn, maybe like a Slay the Spire, might take 5 minutes to play out. Sometimes it might take, 20 seconds if you just have simple attacks to make.
Have you ever played Horde Magic, Tim?
Yeah, playing against like a big deck of cards. Yeah,
a big deck of cards. I think Theros had some slight variation on it as well.
Yeah.
The deck just kind of produces enemies for you, and then you have to kind of battle the deck, and it's a little bit closer to the PvE element that you were talking about.
Yeah, I remember playing, I think it was Theros. There's like basically a Horde of Minotaur deck. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to hold them off, and there's like 2 or 3 or 4 players all working together, almost like a 3-headed giant. If the turns are complicated, it's satisfying because it's more like a cooperative board game or something where, okay, here are the cards I have, here are the cards you have. How do we want to combine those in order to maximize our chance of winning here?
Yeah. And how analogous is this to like the Archenemy variant where there's one person, they're kind of pulling all the strings and the 3 of you are teaming up against them to try and stop them from beating you?
Yeah, your hero characters, like your Ghost Rider, your Wolverine or whatever, they have a wider variety of abilities than the enemies you're fighting. I kind of think of Archenemy almost as being like a super player. They have even more choices than one player does because they have these like cool scheme cards that often give them more resources. It's kind of cracking the code on how to get people interested in Archenemy. Yeah, maybe that's like some of the same things that we're talking about here. One thing that makes Midnight Suns a little different and maybe more like Chandelar or something like that, the old Windows Magic game, is that it's more of a campaign rather than being run-based. Part of the excitement of a Slay the Spire, you start with a deck of really bad cards, and within 20 minutes you have a bananas deck full of crazy synergies. This is a little slower pace. This is, you're going to do a battle, you're going to get a card or 2. You're going to do another battle, get a card or 2. I'm not sure if that's quite satisfying, getting one card, one magic card. I don't know if people would be happy with just getting one magic card.
I mean, it depends maybe where you're getting that magic card from. If maybe acquiring magic cards through Ante was more exciting than history would let us believe.
Mm-hmm. I believe in it. Someday I will play a game for Ante. I don't know when.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like, I've always had this dream of like trying to recreate that feeling. There's like a feeling in Magic when you first start out of like almost infinite possibilities, and like I'm playing this card because this giant elemental tree thing looks so cool, and like when I play it, like I completely devastate everybody I play against. Like my friend group is like totally afraid of it, and then eventually you learn that tree elemental is actually terrible, and like competitive players would never play it because it costs 7 mana or something.
It's like a last pick draft card, but you didn't know that at the time. Yeah.
But once you learn that, it kind of like shatters that glass ceiling, and so now you can't ever go back there, and so you view every card a lot more viciously. Like maybe is the word for it, where you're like, okay, that's no good, that's useless, that's too expensive. And like Commander for a little bit captured that, where I felt like, oh, Commander was the place where I played this draft chaff that I wouldn't play anywhere else. But now my idea is like, oh, if I can create my own little world of a set and then hand out those cards and then almost create your own little internal environment, and people are playing for ante and trading within that environment, maybe you could kind of recreate that feeling a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I just started with some of my friends a Commander Sealed League. We opened like 12 packs or something like that, and the person who's running it decided trading is allowed. We're gonna keep the same pool week to week, but trading is allowed. So the first week we played like one game in the span of like 6 hours, because we were first of all opening a million packs and trying to figuring out what deck to make, but then also like kind of separating your cards into the tradable cards and the garbage cards, and like looking at each other's piles and saying, here are the 6 cards I'm interested in, here are the 4 that you're interested in, let's use rarities or something to trade.
That's where the like acquiring 1 or 2 cards is kind of like at its coolest, at its most gratifying in Magic. Oh, I picked up this like one random card. Something I did for a long time with my skeleton EDH deck is just like I didn't touch it, and I just waited to find another cool card with a skeleton in the art. And like I had no idea that existed. I want to trade for this, and they're like, "What? That's like a 2-cent draft chaff. Why do you want that?" I'm like, it has a skeleton in the art. That's why I want it.
You got so excited by skeletons, you just randomly highlighted a chunk of the dock.
What can I say?
But anyhow, one of the funny things that I'm learning in that Sealed League is, so if you want to, you can basically buy 1 pack a week to then add to your pool, and then, you know, trade those cards. There is some part of what you're saying where like getting a cool new card, that might be satisfying enough. But what has happened what happened like a couple days ago when we did this was I like opened a whole pack of Battle for Baldur's Gate, which is like a commander set. So like there's going to be some commander leaning cards in it. And then like looking through it and like, well, there's like a mana rock in here, and there's like an okay flyer, and there's a background. But the rare is garbage. And it's like, well, I guess I don't know. I guess I upgraded 2 cards out of 65 playable cards in my commander deck. I might not even see them today.
So with these like self-contained environments where like the value of the cards isn't like something that also happens in Magic is you learn that like cards have monetary value, and so you just like even though there's this $8 card that like you're like, but I'm only going to trade it for $8 even though I'm not using it, and like you have a card that I'd actually use. That can go away a little bit in these like self-contained environments where maybe the cards have the value of the cards is like I can win a game with this card versus this card I can't play. When you get in that mindset, you know, something that happens in sports is you get this Moneyball idea where it's like, here's all the players that you can get for cheap that people don't want because there's some sort of thing that they don't like about them. But if you get all of them together, there's like a hidden advantage where all of these players are really good at getting on base. So actually, if we have all the players that can get on base, we'll score more runs because we have more players on base. I wonder if there's something you can do with that. Like, wow, no one likes 3 mana 2/2s. But that means that there's a hole where I can get a bunch of 3 mana 2/2s for really efficient. Like I can acquire all of the 3 mana 2/2s, so that now there's a void and people don't have any 3 mana 2/2s to fill in their curve or something. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit too out there.
Yeah. So Midnight Suns is a little bit different because, you know, again, it's single player. None of these have monetary value, so we're actually kind of nice there, right? Over the course of the game, you'll unlock the rarest cards or whatever. You can kind of craft cards or whatever, but there's no monetary element to it. Most characters start with 2 of 4 different cards for their 8 cards. So you need to have exactly 8 cards in your deck. And the default deck for a lot of characters is, 4 attacks, and there are 2 different attack cards. And then like some utility card and then some heroic card. We'll get into what those mean later. You get a new card, you can replace one of those cards. And then you actually get to do something even cooler. So let's say I get a cool attack from a battle. I upgraded one of my 4 attacks to a cooler one. You can combine 2 of your normal cards into basically a better version of that same card. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine if I get 2 shocks, I might be able to fuse the 2 shocks into a shock that also scries 2. So I've sort of received 2 new cards almost when I got 1 new card. I got whatever my new card is, my normal one. And then I kind of used up my 2 crappy cards to make 1 good card to actually go along with that. I'm still at 8 cards. That's really fun. Something like that could be fun in a draft, like a QB draft environment where you get to, after the draft phase, you can turn in 2 of a card or 3 of a card to get a better version of that card. But you might also be giving up, multiple playables to get 1 better card.
Mm-hmm. It also it would be interesting. So like in that sense, you're drafting and you're combining the cards as you draft. So like it's more of a instantaneous gratification. It'd also be cool in like kind of the sealed league like you're talking about is I could like, I've opened now 3 of these crappy uncommons that I don't really want, but I can combine them to make a better version. And in that way, you kind of have that like legacy aspect to the game. It'd be even cool to do that in like a cube environment or something where it's you can legacy up your cube and permanently affect later cards in the cube. So when you draft them again, you're like, oh, I planted this good card in here now because I crafted these 2 cards or whatever.
Yeah, someone drafted all 3 of the lightning bolts. So now lightning bolt deals 4 damage, but there's only 1 copy. It goes back down.
Yep.
There are some cubes where there's 1 of the rares, 2 of the uncommons, 3 of the commons or something. But now there's 3 less of that common, and now it's only 1 rare, basically. But it's a cooler card. That's always so appealing. That's what people kind of theorize with like legacy stickers and stuff.
Yeah. Instead of power creep being this ever-present like monster of design where it's like the only way to make lightning bolt more interesting, I guess, is to add some extra element of power to it. Well, now it's like a game element to make as a person playing the game, I'm the one making the lightning bolt stronger. It's not the game designer who has done it, Me taking my actions in the game has actually made the thing stronger. And I think maybe that's more appealing from like as a game designer aspect of like, I'm giving the power to the player to increase the ability and now they have a hand in it rather than me just saying like, okay, that card's now outdated. Here's a stronger version of it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a boredom detector. I guess if I had 3 lightning bolts in my draft deck, I'd actually be kind of happy running 3 of them.
Yeah.
But if I had 3 shocks or if I had 3 grizzly bears, I might say, well, I don't really want to play any of them. But if I combine them into one thing, like a 2-mana 4/4, I'd take 1 2-mana 4/4 over 3 2-mana 2/2s.
Right.
Kind of making sure that all the cards are kind of fun by the absolute worst cards getting smushed into basically upgraded versions of themselves.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting idea. So that suddenly draft chaff, like there's always in every draft environment, there's cards that just kind of get pushed to the bottom. Suddenly those cards like rise to the top, and it almost like adds in an aspect of you kind of have to be constantly scouting to make sure like, okay, is this 2-mana werebear? Is this suddenly good now? Is this like an early draft pick? In Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Skullduggery keeps falling to me really late in the draft. So if I see a Skullduggery and I'm like, oh, I could use one of those. Yeah, I'm never going to pick it up until like the last 1 or 2 picks because I know it's just going to be there later on.
But then that gets, underdrafted long enough that an upgraded version is made that's +2 +1 -2 -1 instead of 1 1 1 1. And then you're like, oh, actually, if I want that, I might have to take it earlier.
Yeah, suddenly, is this card better? Yeah.
Yeah. And you can imagine like the cube maker is like printing out the 9 cards that got fused that run.
Yeah, it sounds like so much work for whoever the game designer is on that. Like, I gotta keep track, but hey, we're working in a theoretical space here.
I guess you could use a marker or something too if you wanted to. Between missions, you can kind of hang out with the characters, and you can befriend different characters. If you like a character more, you spend more time with them. That might unlock some more cards for them, or like a passive ability for them, which isn't super relevant to Magic, but it's just part of how the card stuff works in that game, how the story stuff works in that game.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's not relevant to you, Tim, but I know for me that after a good game of Magic, if I'm like, hey, why don't we all sit down and watch this movie? I feel like it makes my following games actually a lot better and more interesting.
Oh, there you go.
I think friendship can actually increase the enjoyment you get out of your.
Oh, friends. Okay, maybe I should make some. All right. And then, like after hanging out at the movie, your friend said, "Now that we've become such close friends, I'm going to give you the 5 damage lightning bolt."
That's actually how all of life actually works. Yeah.
Gifted exclusive Magic rewards for hanging out with your friends and family.
Yeah, this actually sounds like a horrifying, like Black Mirror dystopian future thing now.
Unlock an exclusive T-shirt design by hanging out with.
I'm now
Rick
actively
Smith.
cutting off my friends.
All right. One of the number one questions: what's the kind of resource system? Right. We got mana and magic and card draw and stuff like that. In this game, you draw, I think, 5 cards a turn, I want to say. And then your 3 main resources during the turn are you have 3 card plays normally. You could play any 3 of your cards. You have 2 redraws, which is basically like free cycling, and then 1 move. Moves are mostly used to kind of set up those like ping pong kind of combos. Though you can also kind of like move into, later on, some characters can like move into an enemy character to like knock them up in the air or stun them or do whatever. A move is sort of like a kind of like free floating sort of like bonus action. But your main 2 things there, you got multiple card plays, and then you have a couple redraws.
I'm assuming you can like interweave all of these. So, I'm going to play a card, move here, redraw a card. And then by doing it in that order, it's now set up this card to be better in some way.
Yeah. Because there's not quite the same like ramping up that Magic has, where the cards that you can play on turn 1 are probably not as powerful as the cards that you can play on turn 6. You're kind of like firing right from the get-go. You're using your best attacks. One of the kind of funny things about that is that it sort of means that like anything that can help you eliminate an enemy on the first turn is like extra good. If you can front load a little bit of damage to like, instead of it being a 3-on-6, be a 3-on-3, that's really going to get you far ahead.
How is turns decided? Do you get to go first every time? Or
I think the scenario kind of decides for you.
Okay.
Sometimes, you show up in an area and it was an ambush, so then the monsters, some Hydra soldiers attack you or whatever.
So it's in that way, it's kind of like, some of these like, I think of Roller Coaster Tycoon, where you like could set up the scenario where you have like a really cheap. This is not Magic related at all, I guess. But like you have this very cheap theme park, and it's like the goal is to make 200 million or whatever, and you're just like dropped into that scenario, and that scenario kind of affects like you just maybe are denied access to certain things that you would normally have in creative mode, and so you kind of have this limited restriction.
So you're not building from the very beginning. You've got like a half finished park, and within the next 3 hours of game time, you have to take the half finished park and make a cool park.
Yeah. And so, it's kind of the game is either setting you up to be slightly more in a difficult position or giving you a little bonus here, so it's slightly easier to get to this outcome.
Yeah,
and it sounds like that's kind of how these fights work.
Oh, you're fighting against Venom, and Venom is like a Marvel villain who is like vulnerable to sound. So if you can lure him towards this bell and hit this bell with one of your attacks, that's going to like, stun him or whatever. So there's like, there might be some modifiers, maybe kind of like a plane in Magic or something. In this area, these cards are cheaper. These cards are easier to use.
Yeah.
You draw extra cards every turn or whatever. How would Magic be if, like, I don't know, during your draw step, you also got to do like one redraw? Like, or at the end of your turn, you get to discard 1 card and draw a card, or put 1 card on the bottom, draw a new card.
Huh. Would that would lower the variance generally in gameplay, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which then lends itself to like, a slightly more skilled player is going to benefit from a lower amount of variance, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Alternatively, like maybe it affects deck construction. So like your deck construction, you want to emphasize maybe playing more, because we have this in Magic, you have the land resources as like your kind of limiting factor. And so for that reason, you have to play a certain number of cards that just produce mana.
Mm-hmm.
And so by having, this ability to draw and discard, maybe you can lower that. You have more action, more things are happening. Perhaps there's less non-games. One of Magic's boogeymen's is like, how do we avoid just getting non-games where it's
the
like
5 or 10% non-game.
Somebody doesn't have a meaningful decision.
Yeah. If you're in an environment where you don't have either that much control over the contents of your deck, or you want to encourage players to play situational cards, that's where redraws could like really enhance the gameplay. One of the things in Midnight Suns is you kind of don't know the battle going in. You don't like see the layout of the battle. You don't quite know what kind of enemies you're facing. So you may just be stuck with a card in your deck that like just doesn't do very much. And that is a lot less punishing if you get to redraw a couple cards every turn, because or you have a card that like can finish off multiple enemies if they're all damaged, but is useless on turn one. Play with that, because that's a fun thing to do, finish off a bunch of people at once. But I don't want to be stuck with it, so I'm just going to take a more generic card, which I don't know, is an impulse I often feel playing Magic and playing limited. I'm really like a 2-color build your curve type of drafter, and like a really fundamentals based drafter, where I just want to have the creatures come out at the right speed. I don't want to get too fancy with non-creature spells because I don't want to get stuck with a lot of non-creatures. But if I had more redraws, I could feel a little more comfortable doing that, because I wouldn't be stuck just getting run over on turns 2, 3, and 4 by a creature curve.
Yeah, and one of the ways that I feel like Magic's gone about solving that, where you maybe are encouraged to play cards with a tighter niche, or cards that can satisfy a specific niche, is that they have added those abilities onto cards that are already kind of playable.
Yeah, that's true.
So like the classic example that I can think of is the new Naturalized, that's you can destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a natural response to the existence of one best of one on Arena.
Yeah, sure.
So you kind of have to, you can't just let the graveyard strategy always do well in limited. So if a card that you already kind of want to play has some graveyard hate built into it as a rider, that's kind of useful.
I think that was one of the Modern Horizons even had that card. Plus, it also had Reinforce, so you could discard to pump a creature.
Yep.
Yeah, you can just give a card so much utility. That seems like it's working around a problem rather than fixing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're good to play. Their play value is high. But when you're reading them, the aesthetic value is pretty low.
Yeah.
Whereas just having a simple card that does a weird thing, that's where I don't know, you kind of want to encourage people to do that.
I think the best example that I've seen in Outlaws of Thunder Junction is there's like this 2-mana 2/2, which is like a fine rate.
Yeah.
That can also destroy an artifact or enchantment. I've had a couple people play that against me. It looks solid. It gives them a naturalized option in the main deck.
Yeah.
And even though as a 2-mana 2/2, it's probably getting a little bit outclassed by some of the other cards, the like ability to get out from under a random enchantment or save a card from enchantment removal is a pretty nice leg up when it's relevant and you're not giving up too much.
Yeah. Like it's like a really safe card to put in your deck. That's the kind of card that I play all the time, or that I want to play, is something that like very high floor. But as a designer, I feel like I don't want that to be. I don't want to. I think sometimes of the all uncommons cube, where it's just all the best uncommons that have ever been printed. These are all extremely solid cards that you can put in a deck. It doesn't really matter what cards I play because they're all good. I want to push against that if I can. And redraws, I don't know, it felt kind of like a nice way to do that. I guess it adds more time, right? Because you have to decide whenever you put this phase at the beginning of turn, at the end of turn, you're going to add an extra 5 to 60 seconds to every turn, which maybe is like actually a big cost.
If you're like applying the solution of Magic, it's definitely a more bold decision. Like the decision of just like, we're going to make cards better is a safer decision.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel like you can make the wrong decision, then it doesn't feel like your decisions matter.
Yeah. You're more likely to have a solid, fun game. And you can just believe that, as you're drawing cards and you're playing them, interesting things are going to happen. So all those things are great, right? Like it's fun to play with cards that are good. Maybe more than a redraw. If you just imagine like scry 1 every turn, that probably adds a decent amount of time to every game.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you've got that one-on-one environment, that's too big a cost.
Yeah.
So the other kind of component to the resources, I guess you might say, in Midnight Suns are the card types, and that also kind of bleeds into one of the main resources in the game. So you've got attacks. Almost every attack has some rider on it. It's not just damage. There are skills, which are sort of like your, spells that can do anything else. There's like a Doctor Strange card that draws like 2 cards and then like does some other thing. This might be a Wolverine card where he like draws some cards and then like gains lifesteal so he can heal up because he gets to regenerate. And then the third type of card is a heroic card, which can be either like an attack or like a skill, but has a heroism cost. This terminology is not my favorite, but heroism is built up by using attacks and skills. I could have, Wolverine do 2 attacks, and then Doctor Strange use a heroic ability with that heroism. 3 is a typical heroic card cost, 3 heroism. So 3 attacks I need to use before I can use a heroic card. But there are some that are one heroism, and there's some that are 6 or whatever. This is kind of the main resource that you need to like draw around. If I have an opening hand of all heroic cards, I'm completely stuck. So I got to get rid of them. I got to draw new cards.
This kind of reminds me a little bit of energy from Kaladesh. This feels like the most kind of logical thing you just port right into Magic of like, hey, if you do these 3 things throughout the game, you get this resource to get.
Yeah.
If you target a creature, exile a card from a graveyard. Well, now I'm just describing crimes. But what if you got a crime tracker? Like, and then Thunder Junction turned into like Grand Theft Auto, where you could get 5-star crime, and then you could spend your 5 stars
and
on
then
something.
that like kickers your spells or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that just kind of sounds like a mechanic.
That actually sounds good.
Design a set around, right?
That sounds good. I guess if like energy had more of an imbalance of the cards that generated energy and the cards that spent energy, because a lot of the energy designs are like they like bring the energy that they then use to spend. But if it was more like if energy was a much bigger part of a set than it was in Kaladesh, you could have more spells that just incidentally generated energy, and then some spells that generated no energy but required energy. That might be kind of close to what we're talking about here.
Or my thought would even be more use it as like as a thing that maybe you have a little less choice in using. So like, maybe if Kaladesh you built up energy, and then once you reached a certain amount of energy, your next spell became energized. So in that way, the resource isn't just something you can collect up and then save to use at the perfect time. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you energize a spell that like, I'm sure you feel fine about it. But it's not something you're necessarily holding on to forever that your opponent also can't interact with.
Yeah, you cast 3 spells, and then the 4th spell you cast, the creature enters with extra counters or something. Well, it's not the creature that I wanted to get the counters. But it is bigger, so I guess that's cool.
There's it's not perfect, but you don't feel bad about it either.
Yeah, and that's probably a little less variance than the like lopsided energy cards I was talking about, because no matter which creature you cast, it will be bigger. Maybe I want it to be my flyer, but my 3 mana 3/3 being a 3 mana 5/5, I can deal. There's no cost to cast the attacks and skills, but the amount of heroism those attacks and skills give is variable. So typically attacks give you 1 heroism, and typical skills give you 2. So it's sort of a way to like make up for the fact that like front loading damage is really good by like making the skills build up to your extra strong attacks. If I'm just going to be playing a lightning bolt, I don't need a big energy reward to want to play a lightning bolt. But if you want me to play a life gain card, I might not want to play a life gain card, but if you staple some energy on there, maybe actually I'm interested now.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to make less desirable cards. It's kind of a similar situation to we talked about earlier of like, how can you make less desirable cards playable? Well, you can make it so that discarding them is easier, so you can redraw, you can tack on something that's relevant later in the game.
Is there anything else that's kind of like this? Like, draw a card is like often too big a reward to staple onto a card, Is
there some variation you can do on Storm Because like if you think about it, like storm, if you cast a spell, it adds to your storm count, and then on the end of the turn you get it. That obviously isn't desirable, but like if casting a spell added to your like overall turn, like overall game's storm count, I don't know, it would be untrackable, unfortunately. But in that, like doing the normal things you would do in a game of Magic can like build up in some way. That might be useful. The closest thing I can think of is obviously Storm, but we want it to expand out beyond just a single turn.
Like, I can track how many sorceries I've played or how many, instant non-creature spells I've played. And if you've cast at least 5 this game, then this card has an extra kicker. If you've cast at least 10 this game, then it has this even better kicker.
Do you feel like maybe the Ring Tempts You is kind of in this same space?
Okay, yeah.
You do have to play a critical mass of the Ring Tempts You cards so that you can reach that ultimate ability at the end where you have theoretically very powerful creature bearing the ring with a lot of abilities. It was a thing that you could just tack onto a card, and suddenly that card's a little bit more relevant because the Ring Tempting You was generally good, getting to move it around, that creature getting an additional ability, all very relevant things in that format.
Yeah, maybe that is the kind of thing where you're kind of building up almost a level up, like a meta level up. As I'm doing these repetitive things, I get to build up this other tracker that I get paid off by. Is it too much tracking to say, like, if you cast at least 2 spells last turn or within the last turn or something like that? Like, here's a card that you can't play right away. You have to wait a little bit. I don't know. Maybe that's too weird.
My thought is, we have cards that exile the top card of your library and you can play them next turn.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if there's a way you could do that with exile a card from your hand. You may play that card from exile until your next turn. If you do, draw a card on cast or something.
Oh, okay. So this is kind of like almost like a madness, but with a different condition than discarding.
Yeah, like maybe it's intrinsic to the card somehow. So, you might let's say you cast your shock.
Yeah.
So you cast a red shock, and if you target a player, you may exile a card from your hand. If you do, when you cast that card next turn, you get to deal 1 damage to target creature that player controls.
Oh, you cast this shock, and then you may declare, I'm going to cast this spell next turn. And if you do actually do it, then that spell is cheaper or better or whatever else. All right. Obviously, we've all been playing with plot a lot lately. So like plot variants are kind of top of mind. If you attack with 3 more creatures, you may exile this card from your hand. If you cast it from exile, it enters with a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah.
Fulfill a condition to cause it to become plotted, or whatever our variant of plot is. And then if you cast it from that mode, if you didn't just cast it from your hand, that's the boring way to do it. If you cast it from exile because you satisfied a condition first, you get some extra juice, or it's cheaper or something else.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I feel like there's probably a little bit more design space, or at least a more interesting design space with that type of mechanic, because you can look at all of the different things that you can choose to have matter in Magic. Oh, if a creature card entered was put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn, you can exile this from your hand.
Almost like the good version of a trap rather than the adversarial version of a trap.
Yeah.
Like a Zendikar trap, it might be, hey, if your opponents cast at least 2 creatures this turn, this kill spell's cheaper. And if your opponents shuffle their library, this spell's cheaper. But this is, maybe you can apply that technology to conditions that you meet, that you aspire to.
Maybe it's some sort of like occult style world where everyone's trying to complete different rituals. So the Boros group wants to complete their rituals, and their rituals all involve attacking, and the Dimir group's rituals all involve milling your opponent's cards or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to live in a world where there's 10 factions and every faction wants to summon a demon to end the world, and they're all culty, and it's just like, come on, guys, where's the people who just want to like get up, have breakfast, drink a cup of coffee?
Either my mind's going to be shattered by Cthulhu, my city's laid waste by the Cloverfield monster, or like zombies are going to convert me and my family. Yeah, all the outcomes are bad. It's fun in its own way, I guess. This resource of like, you have to do a couple other things to kind of charge up to do this other thing. you can't cast this spell until you have at least 3 elves either in play or in your graveyard. I guess that's a little bit like a legendary sorcery, like the ones I had from Dominaria, where you need a legendary creature in play to be able to cast it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess an uncastable spell is maybe a little less fun in Magic because we can't have that much variance a lot of the time.
The heroism cards, like you kind of said, are naturally enabled by the fact that you can redraw them. I remember in the pre-release, drawing Urza's Ruination, and it's like, this is going to be really great if I find a legendary creature so that I can actually cast it. And granted, there were a lot of ways to get legendary creatures in that set, but until then, it was just still a card in my hand that was blank, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other games use their cards as actual like resources as well to kind of compensate for this as well. So like, I think of Flesh and Blood, you literally pitch cards and that's how you get your energy or mana or whatever system they have to cast cards. You have to get rid of other cards in your hand. And Magic could also do something of a similar nature of like turning these cards into just something you can make into a resource. I guess we have done that with like Simian Spirit Guides, and that didn't work out very well. That got banned out of Modern.
A particular card,
not too long ago.
But there are cards that are like pay 2 mana and discard this to go fetch a land, or it's a 7/7. Like we do have some things that are like that. Another thing that's in this game that feels more in the variant zone than it feels like a mainstay Magic thing is item cards. You might raid a stash of some bad guys and find some items. And then item cards don't go in your deck. They're kind of like their own little pile. You can usually bring like 2, I think, to any given combat. And then you could use them whenever you want, and they don't cost a card play. The inspiration to me for this was, what if you could draft cards that you could use once ever during the event?
Ooh.
Almost like a command zone. You had access to them the whole time.
Well, I'm trying to first think of what is the effect you're thinking of. Like a card that you draft once, and one time you can just deny your opponent an attack, maybe. So like your opponent's creatures can attack this turn, and maybe that buys you a turn. Is that... I feel like that's close to the realm of like powerful enough I would draft it just to have in my sideboard and use it to swing a game.
Yeah, I guess you could kind of pick what you're trying to target for the power level. Because if you just had an item that was draw a card, like that's obviously not a very good card because you only get to cast it once. But if that card doesn't cost anything or it costs like 1 mana or whatever, like that's maybe an 11th pick. It's maybe not a last pick. And it's sort of like a way to make the last couple picks a little more fun. But yeah, you could also make them a little better. And then it's like, well, here's a one-time card that I can pick, or I could take a pretty good creature that I could put in my deck.
Do these cards make more sense as kind of what Magic traditionally does, is try and create cards that you can play normally, so you can play them as a normal card or use them for something else? So when you're at that like 11th or 12th pick, maybe it's a 3-mana 2/2, but if it's in your sideboard, you can just completely exile it from everything, everywhere, use it once, and it draws you a card, like you're saying. So it can be that creature, but it also has like an ally effect or something associated with it.
I kind of like the idea of like a card that you can't put in your deck. Something about that was kind of interesting to me, because that's how these item cards in Midnight Suns work. These are cards that are a completely separate mechanic. I don't know. The one game you do play that day, you're playing your 4 games or whatever with your friends one evening. And that one game where your hand is just awful and you get to fire off, well, here's my one get out of jail for the night where I draw an extra card to get the land drop that I need to get my game going.
How did contraptions work in Unfinity? Or maybe attractions are in a similar boat, where these are both things that they are their own separate deck.
Yeah.
But you can activate them throughout. That still doesn't quite feel in the same like aspiration, though. I like this idea of like a tool belt you kind of have, and you can pull something off of that tool belt. Like you can pull a smoke bomb off and now you disappear or whatever. I think that type of energy is something that contraptions and attractions do not capture.
Yeah. You might draft between 0 and 4 of these over the course of your draft.
I wonder if it's better if you just don't draft them at all. Maybe what you open is what you get. So like you open your pack, and instead of a token, each pack comes with or maybe instead of a land, each pack comes with this item, and it's something that you get like, here you go. Thanks for coming to the draft. Here's your batarang. And now you have a batarang and you can deal 1 damage to a creature, and maybe that swings a combat for you or something.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's just something you literally find. You don't have it. It doesn't. You don't have a choice in it. Your choice comes when you're actually playing and when you get to use it.
That seems like a good thing for playtesting as well. Just give everyone 3 of these after a regular draft, and that lets you test out the mechanic without organizing a whole set or whatever.
Yeah. And it also prevents somebody from, God forbid, just drafting so many of these they can't construct an actual deck. They have 20 basic lands.
I was wondering, like, what if someone had like 6 of them and decided, you, Peter, I'm going to use all 6 on you. I'm going to lose all my other games, but I'm going to draw an extra card, deal damage, tap all your creatures once. Like they're all mini things, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. I guess that's sort of like you can only use 1 item per game, or you can only use items at sorcery speed or something like that. You could probably find a way to make that a little less mean, or depending on your friend group, let it be mean. You got the super bomb, well, I got 6 tools.
Pocket sand.
Yeah, I guess also the items are maybe more important the more you care about winning. Because if I don't care if I win, I don't have a huge reason to use a tool. But if I'm like really thinking, I really want to win all 3 of these games against these 3 opponents, then the tension is really strong. I'm kind of even with my opponent, but if I use up my draw a card item, I'm going to pull ahead probably, and that'll probably seal it. But if I'm even, is that too desperate a time to use my item?
And maybe it's just too overbearing for people where they, I think of the classic, like you're in the RPG and you get these 1-use items in your RPG and you just keep saving them. And then eventually you get to the end credit scene and you haven't used any of your items because you were just so paranoid you were going to need them.
That's an experience we're going to gift to all the people playing this. Where they're like, this is just like in my childhood where I bought 99 of each regular potion and then past level 5 never drank a single potion because they were too weak.
Lucky you, gamer.
Some other kinds of gameplay things to kind of like pump up the vibe that there's a lot of enemies. There are some enemies that have like exactly 1 hit point, whereas like most enemies might have like 50 or 100 or 200 hit points. So any attack will kill them. Well, some attacks also have this quick keyword that if it kills an enemy, you get to refund that card play. So you get your 3 card plays per turn. One of them's a quick attack. You sort of got 4 card plays that turn.
Something that happens as you get later in levels in D&D is like the DMs like up the amount of HP. So it just turns into like I'm going to roll my dice. The enemy's going to roll their dice like slugfest. And it becomes really stale and boring. So just adding in a couple really weak minions that are just there so that things go on and off the board. Very important.
How can we like have more creatures on the battlefield and have that not junk up the magic system too much?
Is Decay the best example of that?
I guess Decay creatures, yeah. But 1/1 tokens are kind of fun. Like we know that has like, if I have like a 3-mana creature that also comes along with a 1/1. I know that 1/1's actually kind of good in limited. How do I make sure that like I can give people even more tokens, but also have something in the gameplay that like makes it so that doesn't go out of control?
The more tokens you give people, the more cards you can add on that like specifically have a bonus effect that also takes out the tokens. My thought is like Trick Shot is a spell that deals 6 damage and 2 damage to a token.
Okay, yeah.
It's not quite a 2-for-1. It feels a little 2-for-1-y.
That like specifically says tokens. If you also you can kill a regular creature and sort of kill like any token you want for free.
Yeah. I think the engaging part of the mechanic from the Marvel game is the feeling of free. Like I got my card back. So like if I Spark Jolt, if I deal 1 damage to a token, that kind of feels bad. Like I spent 1 mana, dealt 1 damage to a token. Ugh. If I spent 1 mana, dealt 1 damage to a token, and then I get my Spark Jolt or whatever back, that doesn't feel nearly as bad. And now I can use that 1 damage somewhere else.
Yeah, there's a card in Thunder Junction, Consuming Ashes, which is a 4-mana black card that exiles target creature. Which 4 mana to exile a creature that you would usually mean I really want to save this for like a 5 or 6 drop, like a creature that's more expensive than my spell. But it has an extra rider on it. If it had mana value 3 or less, Surveil 2. Which is, not the words draw a card, but is like in the neighborhood of draw a card. If you use your expensive spell to kill a little guy, you actually get a refund on some amount of card. If that creature had toughness 2 or less, or if that creature was dealt excess damage, or something like that, draw a card, or do something else. Yeah, maybe that makes it more fun to fire off my removal on little guys.
I think that is a thing that happens with drafting, is like sometimes or in limited, you'll fire off your removal too early, and then your opponent plays a bomb and you have no removal for it. Or alternatively, you'll hold your removal for too long, and then you just get overrun by like a bunch of little creatures. Especially if the goal is to, maybe I want a lot more tokens in this set. I think that's kind of the space where you're kind of going to need that. If you add a lot of tokens, but you don't want those tokens to be gumming up the board, is there a possible solution where killing a token doesn't become such a like 0 for 1? Because tokens are most often like a little bonus you get on top of something.
Like a third of a card or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, some way to make it actually kind of fun. Like, I think that's the effect that it has in Midnight Suns, where you can sometimes have 2 quick cards in your hand. You draw 5 cards. You might have 2 of them. You might have a little card draw or something. You might be able to mow down all the minions, and then you're like, oh, this is awesome. This is what the good guys are doing. They're just like blowing away all the little demons. And then you're just left with the 3 or 4 serious guys. You're like, all right. And then turn 2, the real battle starts. You also build up a little heroism as you're doing it, which is nice.
I'm picturing like an MTG set based around dooms. And the idea of like there's a bunch of monsters, but you just got like a shotgun and you're running around and you're blowing all these monsters away as fast as possible. And so that you could, I don't know, for some reason that's the image I'm getting of the idea of like flooding the board with creatures and eliminating those creatures really quick. Which would definitely be a new thing I haven't seen in Magic.
I think of in Commander, often people have more cards, like because they have their commander if they need something to cast, blah, blah, blah. So the other thing you can refund is the mana cost. So if you imagine you're like 3 mana murder, if it targets a creature that's mana value 2 or less, get your mana back. That actually feels like it would be pretty fun. Then you like using your removal is always so sad because you're only affecting one of the 3 other players. And also, you're kind of falling further behind because you didn't develop. But if you can remove the problem thing and also develop a little bit, play a creature, play an artifact, I don't know, maybe feel a little better.
It kind of does the same thing as plot of it kind of sets up these interesting synergistic turns. Like if I have a murder and then that morbid card that gives you a 2/2, I don't remember what its name is.
Yeah.
I can, murder a small creature and get my 2/2 that makes a 2/2 when it enters. And that feels pretty cool, and that feels a little bit swingy, even though I'm only killing a small creature to set it up.
Yeah. And maybe it's a little more controlled because we've had like the quote unquote free spells that there's like 10 cards that all untapped lands.
Rewind and treachery.
Yeah. If I'm only getting that rider, if I use it on something that isn't quite as worthy, maybe that's also a little less abusive. So treachery is gain control of target creature, untap, and there's like I think 5 mana and you untap 5 lands. If I only get to untap lands if I grab a creature that costs 2 or less, well now there's like this fun thing of like, well I could take control of that little guy who's pretty good and get all my mana back, or I could take control of that giant thing and not get my mana back. Like maybe that's like a tool to apply to removal in Magic. And Rewind is like sometimes a pretty fun card. It's like a 4 mana counter spell that untaps the lands. So you're like extra hard and leaving your mana up and being on the instant lifestyle. But like it's hard to be aggressive with it. Like you can't use that on your own turn really. The quick spells are one of the more fun things in that game. I guess kind of related to that, another thing in the game are chain attacks. So chain cards target multiple things. So it might be like chain 3, which means target 3 things, or the same thing 3 times, or a 2 and a 1. This is maybe kind of like, magic cards where it's like deal 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of blah, blah, blah. If Wolverine uses his chain ability all on one enemy, then he often gets a bonus for doing that. He gets like a buff for his next attack, or, the enemy becomes weakened or whatever. I'm often using these chain attacks to just pick off a bunch of minions, but I can also kind of convert that into like a good card if I want to actually just focus down one big enemy.
The focusing multiple people kind of reminds me of Strive from Theros.
Okay, yeah.
Of just pay extra mana and you get like a kicker effect on it. But I like the element of like turning it all to just focus one person as well, and kind of getting that variable aspect to it, and being able to just kind of, the idea of like Wolverine just slashing up one guy. Like in that way, Strive doesn't accomplish that. Strive is about targeting multiple things, and that's the only use that Strive has. You don't get a bonus for just targeting one thing. I guess multi-kicker kind of has the same effect. You just keep paying extra mana.
Yeah, I guess kind of the thing with chain is that you're not paying extra. It's just the baseline thing isn't that powerful. Mm-hmm. So an example that I was thinking of that you could maybe port into Magic is like target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then 2 more times. And then if it was all in the same target, it also gets trample. So you can imagine I spend my 2 mana. I can just give like +1/+1 to 3 different creatures until end of turn to like win a bunch of combats. Or if I just need to get damage through, I put all +3/+3 onto one guy, and then that also gets trample, and that's what I wanted anyhow. Because I went all in on one guy. I guess that actually seems pretty powerful now that I'm saying it out loud. Like being able to win 2 combats or something like that. Like that seems pretty flexible. If you want your combat trick to be good, maybe that's what you turn to.
Yeah. I think it's just like when a magic card targets multiple things, generally it is a higher mana cost so that you won't ever want it to focus one thing. Like 3 target creatures get +1/+1. What is that? Like a 4 mana spell? Is that too much? And then a 4 mana spell target creature gets +1/+1 3 times and gains trample. I mean, that's kind of in the same wheelhouse. I feel like 4 mana for like a common isn't outrageous there.
Yeah, I might get like your team gets +2/+1 for 4 mana. So I guess 3 creatures is pretty close to all your creatures.
Yeah.
I guess it's also chain is a little bit like Storm, where the Storm value is locked. Next up, this is an interesting debuff. It's called Marked, and it would say something like Marked X. Target enemy gets Marked X, Marked 3. What that means is, if that marked enemy is destroyed the next 3 turns, you draw a card. So this is kind of another tool that we were talking about. You might have a lot of enemies out there. We want to make killing lots of enemies more fun, or setting up like finishing off multiple enemies more fun. Maybe Iron Man can scan a whole area and mark every enemy in here. And if I can kill all 3 of these enemies, I'm going to get 3 cards back. And if I use quick cards to do that, I did that for free to really power trip and really having a great time. I think there have been like bounty hunter-y cards where, put a counter on a creature and if it dies, draw a card. Do you think of that as like a fun thing?
That's a tough question. Like I enjoyed Mathis as the commander card that put a bounty on something, and then there was Chevelle that was in the Ikoria set.
Bane of Monsters, yeah. I remember him, yeah.
But they're like always one-off things. I don't know if it was fun or just felt kind of like gimmicky. But would seeing that expanded upon to be like something that it generally happens in the set, that's a little bit more interesting. Somebody submitted a card for You Make the Pact that's like really close to this. That's kind of interesting.
Oh, okay.
Salt Dust Crusader submitted Assassination Order, which is a black for a sorcery, and you choose one. Put a hit counter on target creature, destroy target creature with a counter on it, and then it has rebound. So the idea is like you can put a hit counter on somebody and then rebound the spell, and on your next turn it'll die. And I could kind of see a set where there's like hit counters floating around, and like, but the iterations they've done so far, they're so self-contained. Did I like playing Chevelle? Sure. Did I like the bounty counter specifically? I don't know. Kind of indifferent about it.
Yeah. If you do have this text that Salt Dust has, destroy target creature with a counter on it. If some of my counters are just +1/+1 counters, and I can kill those, the +1/+1 counters are themed as, Imperial soldiers. So like this is like an anti, a rebel spell that I'm casting. I can kill those things, or I have other counter. I could put a stun counter on something. I can put this marked counter on something.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's like a couple different kinds of counters floating around. And then now, my cards interact with the idea of counters, but the way to get counters is varied.
What would you think about like a counter that when you place it on something, it becomes easier to target that thing? Target creature gets a marked counter. Opponent's spells that targets this creature cost 1 less to cast.
Yeah.
And then you could even have like that hunted kind of thing, maybe. So like you get a 2-mana 4/4 with a marked counter on it, so that things that target it cost 1 less to cast. And so it's pretty easy to remove. I play my 2-mana 4/4, but my opponent can play their murder on 2/2 now.
Yeah, I guess it does. This marked concept interacts kind of weirdly with multiplayer because, but maybe it's kind of fun in its own way. I mark a creature that I really want gone, and then a couple of my opponents get a benefit when it does get removed. Maybe I could justify playing that. All right, I guess kind of like this. We've been kind of talking about counter world, the counters matters world. Salt Dust put us on this crusade here. There's like a vulnerable debuff and a strengthened buff. And this exists on every video game in existence. But vulnerable 2 means your next 2 attacks deal 2 more damage. Strengthened 2 means your next 2 attacks deal 50% extra damage. Is there a world where we want to put like a weakened counter on a creature, and if a weakened counter takes damage, they die, like a fragile counter?
I mean, it definitely sounds interesting and something that easily could happen in Magic. Every like card-based game, like Slay the Spire, has the same generalized mechanic of you can make something weaker or stronger and your stuff deals more damage. And so it's like, why wouldn't this exist in Magic? It'd be so easy to do. I think it's just about finding the right context to put it in. In what world do you want a vulnerable and strengthened condition?
Yeah. I guess strengthened sort of exists in the Death Touch realm, where like if I give a creature Death Touch until end of turn, that's kind of like them dealing extra damage. That doesn't deal more damage to players, I guess, is the difference. Would it be fun to have a counter that makes someone deal double damage? Almost like a double strike counter.
Well, and we have cards that do that as well.
Yeah, like a Torbrand or something increases damage dealt.
Maybe, does it make more sense as an aura instead of a counter? Because, I mean, we have double striking auras too. And so maybe it kind of already exists.
Yeah, I guess as when you're strengthening them, maybe that makes more sense as an aura. I think the thing that I like about fragile or vulnerable is it's not really a card's worth of effect. Because if I'm going to play an aura, I could just play pacifism and then they don't do anything. But if it's a counter, that means I'm probably doling out like multiples of them. I get to apply that effect to each enemy target player controls, or, whenever this attacks, put a vulnerable counter on somebody. I guess, would that just be black? Would any other color get a vulnerable counter? White? Would white get a vulnerable counter?
Yeah, that was where my headspace went, was giving it to white.
I guess blue. Blue has always wanted to shrink things, but it's like they can't just give like minus X toughness because that can kill things, and we don't want blue to like be targeting and killing something.
I'm trying to just figure out in my head: is it fun? Is it fun if like I have a creature that attacks and puts a vulnerable counter on something? I think if the vulnerable counter goes away, then it's fun. But if the vulnerable counter just sticks there forever, that could be really obnoxious.
Yeah, I guess if there's no way for it to go away, for it to leave,
And so in this game, that goes away naturally after so many turns.
Yeah, that's true.
It works the same in Slay the Spire.
Yeah.
It could work very similarly to a stun counter in Magic, of just on your untap step, you remove it.
Yeah, what's the right time in the turn to remove this vulnerable counter? That makes sense, yeah. It means that I can't really, if it goes away at the beginning of the owner's turn, then I can't then my opponent's got a 6/6. I make it vulnerable. They just don't block with it, and now my vulnerable didn't do much.
And even if it's, I'm going to make your thing vulnerable, that could open up an attack, or I remove your thing. That's still doing something. It's encouraging attacking. It's encouraging trading.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. It's probably more ideal than putting a vulnerable counter and now this person just like doesn't know what to do with their 6/6 or 7/7 and they just kind of keep it there around forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes math weird. I think the best home for it is probably in a stun counter idea though, of like it goes away at some point.
Or
on
one of
its
them
own.
goes away every turn, so I could put 3 vulnerable counters on someone. Then they're vulnerable for 3 turns, then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I can keep my 6/6 off on the side if I can afford to. I can keep my 6/6 on the sidelines for a couple turns.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if the time is right, I'm going to attack with it, and it's going to trade for a 4/4. And I'm like, yeah, that was a good enough trade. Alrighty. So I think that's kind of our breakdown of Midnight Suns and how you might apply some of those mechanics over into Magic. A little brainstorming session, a little, like figuring out some kind of cool ideas, kind of learn about another game. What actually had the most potential to you? What were you most inspired by here?
I do actually like the idea of the quick and the free and like capturing a feeling or an aspect and kind of blasting, multiple creatures and eliminating things. But that's not so much like can we get an interesting design element here as so much as like, can we get an interesting feeling or flavor that Magic hasn't expressed elsewhere?
Yeah.
I think the discussion about heroism is probably the most interesting of like, if you complete a quote unquote quest, you can get a little power up and it's just in-baked into the game in some way.
Yeah.
Like we said, attacking with 3 creatures, maybe you exile 3 cards. The reverse trap, if you will. You meet a condition, you get a bonus effect. But generally, I think it's valuable and interesting just to kind of like, oh, here's kind of an interesting thing that a different game is doing. It's an interesting concept, an interesting idea. Can we build off of that into Magic as well? Or like the vulnerable and strengthened buffs are something that appear in a lot of games, but Magic hasn't done. Could Magic express that in a different, unique way?
Yeah. Is now the time? Do we have the technology?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping we can do a couple more of these crossover episodes. This one I kind of sprung on Peter. or like, we're going to talk about this game this week. If you have a card game out there, you listeners have a card game that you'd like to talk about, I'd like to apply this lens to other card games, to other games, to see like what has Magic not done that other card games have done, or even just getting people up to speed on what other games are. I think sometimes you can get stuck playing your one game and then you don't know about all the cool stuff that other games have done. And maybe this is a way to give each other like a glimpse of what other technology is out there for card games.
Magic is this little set of rules, and if you can integrate something new into it, it's just gonna enhance what you can do with a custom Magic set or something. It is like you said, it's just new technology.
Yeah, so if people are just want to request games or want to be on an episode, I'm always looking for that kind of stuff, and I think this is a cool format. There are plenty of card games. I've never played Yu-Gi-Oh in my life, so if there's some Yu-Gi-Oh tech, we got to get in here. Whatever it is, it could be a computer game, card game, board game, that kind of stuff. I want to hear about it. Before we get out of here, we got a couple kind of community reminders. One of those is the May Design Challenge. You may cast it, design a Cascade card for 60 card play for a color combination that hasn't had it yet. There are 4 of those: blue, red, red, white, white, black, and black, green. So design a Cascade card for one of those for like 60 card play, so like Modern Standard, something like that. Some bonus points: sound the Alara, give it Alara, the plain flavor from Alara. That was last month, although it might be May. Don't make it a Mayflower. And then Mayhem, care about or use cards in graveyards. And then this isn't a bonus point, this is just an extra rule. If you want to use Discover instead of Cascade, also totally fine. Let's do May 31st. Do you have a card for that yet, or are you still working on your Maycastic card?
No, I haven't tackled that yet, and partially because we have the You Make the Pack going on.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that's needing a ton of my attention.
How do you pitch You Make the Pack to people? What do we need to tell people to get them excited?
Have you ever wanted to feel like you're designing a Magic set, but don't want to put all the work into designing a Magic set? That's You Make the Pack.
You nailed it.
You get to work with other people too. It's not all on you. If you like getting feedback on your Magic cards, You Make the Pack will get you feedback on your Magic cards. Right before submissions, people like to do a run through all of the cards and just list off, hey, I like this about it. I don't like this about it. I think we can add this to it. So if you like feedback, that's also a good spot.
And I think the thing that's kind of crazy about You Make the Pack that really surprised me is people want this pack to be as cohesive as possible.
Mhm.
They want it to be realistic. They want the flavor to be on point. They want the mechanics to work together. And that's that thing that you really nailed. The feeling of making a set without having to make a whole set.
Yeah. This time we are doing the first two picks blind.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a small but vocal minority of us that are like, we want more chaos. You know, these first couple packs were too easy to get cohesive. We found out the theme and we did it too easily. We want to start on opposite ends of the spectrum. We want one card to be a dog, a Jedi dog, and the other card to be Stone Age octopus. And how do we get those in the same set?
But yeah, I think the other thing that's kind of great about it is you can just kind of jump in and out. You don't really have to know that much if you just want to jump in and vote. We need voters. Those polls go up like every 6 days. So you just want to look at some cards and express your opinion. You could do that too. So that'll be it for our podcast for this week. Jump on the Discord. That's where all the action is. Thanks again, Mono White Border, for not only coming on, but also staying up late on an episode that you weren't quite sure what I was signing you up for.
Yeah. I was skeptical. I'll admit that. If you join the contributors channel, you can see my skepticism fully blown. But I think it came together. I'm pretty happy with it.
Anything you want to tell people about?
Yeah, the NBA playoffs are going on. This episode, hopefully, the Pacers are still in it. And if you want some good Pacers lore, the Pacers and Knicks are playing. Not to date, we're really dating this podcast at the outro here. Pacers and Knicks are playing, so if you want a little documentary, get some history. If you aren't a fan of a basketball team, you're an honorary Pacers fan.
Oh, okay.
Right now. So welcome to the fold, Tim. And winning time, Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks is your homework assignment, so that you can understand all the important lore of Indiana Pacers.
Alrighty. I'm from New England, so until the Celtics are eliminated, I can't root for anybody else.
Yeah, Celtics are big favorites right now. They might not get eliminated. You know, they are But the nice thing is, you know, when the Celtics are favorites, that's the position you want them in, because that's when they'll flub it and throw it all away.
My Bruins, the hockey team, they just had to take it to overtime in Game 7 to get out, to win a 1-8 matchup against the Leafs. So.
Last year, the Bruins were like the best offense ever in the NHL, and they got eliminated in the first round. They had it real rough.
Delivered the Leafs there.
We're all so proud of them, you know.
All right, so the winning time, that's our duty.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
For all you honorary Pacers fans, get caught up.
Is that different from the Lakers winning time?
No, is the Lakers winning time? It's Showtime Lakers, right?
When I Google winning time, the rise of the Lakers dynasty.
Oh my God. Can you believe
2022?
Every big market just comes in and they try and take winning time. Reggie Miller versus the Knicks came out in.
Oh yeah. It's a different winning time.
Yeah. Wow. It came out in 2010. Gosh, some people, you know, they just want to take everything from a small market franchises. And of course the Lakers. Well, you know what? The Lakers didn't even get out of the first round, so
you're outpaced. Oh yeah, I guess the best revenge is a life well lived. So thanks again for that rec. Looks like it's on YouTube, so you can just fire that up.
Yeah, it shouldn't be hard to find.
Love this. If you need to find us, we're on the Discord, Mono White Border and Tim F. Riley. Thanks for listening.